Jim Jones snapped and lunged at Camron in front of a screaming crowd. But this wasn't your typical Harlem beef. This was treachery turned violence. The streets don't know the half of riot, but we do. Chrissy's darkest secret just got exposed in court, and it hit Jim like a bullet to the chest. Cameras were rolling, mics were live, and what Jim screamed at Camron, bro, it's got the whole industry shaken up. Say Cam knew all along. Some believe Chrissy set the whole thing up, and some are terrified to even talk. But here's what no one is telling you. There's a missing witness, a leaked document, and an audio tape that supposedly catches the moment. Jim discovered out he'd been fooled like a fool for years. Why was Camron even there? Why did Chrissy look dead at him when the judge said exposed? Why is everyone becoming silent? Now something major is being hidden, but we're digging it all out because once you hear what truly went down, you'll never look at them the same again. It began with murmurs, with side glances, and stiff shoulders outside but nobody anticipated Jim Jones to lose it like this. The tension was apparent as the air thickened with secrets, deceit, and the kind of betrayal that could shock anyone to their core. Chrissy Lynn, formerly synonymous with loyalty and affection in the hip-hop scene, has been keeping a quiet profile, but that wouldn't last long, and whispers. But this wasn't about rumors anymore. It was real. The proof was damning, and the courtroom had just become the scene for a fight that no one was prepared for when the judge's gavel struck, marking that at the start of the hearing, everyone's eyes were on Jim, his countenance a mix of rage and uncertainty as he struggled to make sense of what was occurring. A court clerk delivered something to the judge, and as the paper was read aloud, it was evident Chrissy had been hiding something major. Jim got up, his voice filled with raw fury. She's lying, this is all a setup. His hands were clenched, his knuckles white, yet no one could have predicted what came next. In a Camron, who had been sitting a few feet away, rose up, his face placid. But the tension between him and Jim was thick enough to cut through the courtroom. Hummed as their eyes met the stillness, stifling, as everyone waited to see what would happen next. Jim was angry. You knew about this. You knew what she was up to. And you never told me, did you? His voice was like a venomous. The two men locked eyes, their history and loyalty to each other flashing through their minds. But Camron, the cool and composed one, didn't flinch. Let's take this outside, he muttered. His voice was as cold as ice. But Jim, propelled by a mix of betrayal and wrath, wasn't having it. You think I'm going to walk away from this after everything we've been through? His comments were piercing, cutting through the courtroom air, and the throng stared confused of what was going to happen next. It was evident that Jim wasn't going to let this go without a fight. He rushed out of the courtroom, leaving behind a trail of whispers and speculation. Camron, uncomfortable but determined, followed him. Once they walked out of the courtroom, the atmosphere transformed. The typical buzz and bustle of the courthouse grounds felt like a distant hum compared to the electric tension between the two men. Jim was pacing back and forth, his thoughts racing with everything that had just unfolded in front of him. Chrissy's betrayal wasn't just about her. It was about everything they had created together. Trust, friendship, and devotion. What the hell is going on? Jim shouted, his voice rising. She's been lying to me the whole time, and you didn't say anything. Camron drew a big breath, his expression unreadable. I didn't know. Jim, you're taking this the wrong way. I've got your back. Jim whipped around, his eyes blazing with wrath. Don't give me that. You knew something was off. How long were you going to let her play me like a fool? Camron struggled to hold his ground. I didn't know the whole story. You've got to believe me, man. His voice was firm, but there was a strain in his eyes. It was evident that whatever was going on with Chrissy was far deeper than either of them. Arrived? Why don't you two tell us what happened in the courtroom? One reporter yelled, another adding, is Chrissy's betrayal the reason for the rift? Jim's expression got even worse as the questions began to rush in. He wasn't in the mood for interviews, especially with the whole world watching, but the damage had already been done. You're making this worse, Jim cried at their reporters, his voice full of frustration. You have no idea what's really going on here. But the more he shouted, the more the cameras flashed, and every moment of this growing drama was being documented for the world to see. As a horde of reporters rushed around them, Camron took Jim aside. We can't keep doing this, man, he whispered, his voice low. The world's watching. We need to stay ahead of this. Jim nodded slowly, his face hardening. He knew Camron was right, but there was something deeper that Jim couldn't ignore. The treachery wasn't just about Chrissy anymore. It was about everything, the lies, secrets, and friendships that were now hanging on. But Jim wasn't ready to back down. We'll handle it our way, but we're doing it on our terms. The two men stood there, locked in their own private battle, with the world watching their every move. The betrayal had been exposed, and as the cameras flashed around them, one thing was clear. This was merely the beginning of the storm. The aftermath of what happened outside the courthouse was nothing short of turmoil. The media storm was in full swing, and every outlet from the local tabloids to the biggest gossip sites was eating up the drama. But Jim Jones, in the midst of it all, was far from ready to let it go. Jim's phone buzzed. His mind rushed from one thought to another as the screen lit up with an endless stream of alerts. Chrissy's treachery had stung hard, but it wasn't just about her. The more he understood, there were things he hadn't known, things he should have seen coming, man. I don't trust anyone anymore, Jim murmured, staring at his phone as the texts flowed in. Camron still by his side took a long take from his cigar and stared over at Jim. You're right to feel that way, but don't let the anger blind you, buddy. You had to think this through. We're in the middle of something greater here. Jim looked up at Camron, his face hardening. Greater than Chrissy's treachery. Bigger than that, Camron responded, his voice steady. Something's off. This isn't just about her lying to you. There's more at play. Here, Jim, trust me. Jim didn't answer immediately. He just glanced ahead. His mind clouded. He had always trusted Camron. They had been through so much together, but now that the pieces began to fit into place, Jim couldn't ignore the sensation that something deeper was. The two men walked in silence for a few minutes until they arrived at a secluded part of the courthouse parking lot, where Jim brought out his phone. A number. Yo, what's the issue with Chrissy? Jim asked the person on the other end of the telephone. His voice was low, frantic on the other end. A voice responded, You really don't know, do you? Jim's heart skipped a beat. What the hell are you talking about? There's more to Chrissy's story than you know. The voice continued, sounding almost delighted. She's been running some serious games behind your back. You've seen the tip of the iceberg, but there's a whole lot more beneath surface. Jim clenched his fist, his nails cutting into his hand. I swear, if she's been fooling me, I'm gonna make her regret it. The voice on the phone laughed coldly. I wouldn't. Be so sure, Jim, you're about to find out the hard way. Before Jim could react, the call stopped. He gazed at his phone for a time, the words resonating in his head. Things are about to get real messy for you. Camron lifted an eyebrow, his face a mask of wrath and uncertainty. That wasn't just a warning, but a threat. Who was it? I don't know, but they know something about Chrissy that might bring it all crumbling down. Just as Jim was about to say more, his phone buzzed again. This time the message wasn't from an unknown number. It was from Chrissy. His pulse hammered as he opened the message, which read, We need to discuss. You don't know the whole story. Please. Walking into any tranquil sit-down, We had to be prepared for anything. Jim concurred he wasn't sure what Chrissy was going to say, but he knew one thing for sure. Whatever it wasn't going to be. Jim and Camron arrived at the meeting point later that night. The place was abandoned, with the only light coming from a low street lamp in the distance. Jim's hands were curled into fists at his sides as he proceeded toward the entrance. Every step felt heavier than the last as they approached the building. Jim observed Chrissy sitting in the corner, looking worried, but collected. Her face softened when she saw him, but there was no warmth in her eyes. Jim's gut nodded uneasiness. "Chrissy," he responded coldly. "What the heck is going on? You've been lying to me, playing me for a fool, and now you're asking for a meeting." Chrissy gazed up at him with an expression illegible. "Jim, please allow me to explain that I never intended for any of this to occur." Jim crossed his arms over his chest. "I'm listening," Chrissy muttered, her eyes darting towards the floor as if looking for the proper words. "I never wanted to hurt you, Jim, but there are things I couldn't tell you that go much beyond just me." Jim's eyes flashed with rage. "What do you mean, don't give? What is the deal with that?" "I've been backed into a corner, Jim," Chrissy said, her voice shaky. "They've got dirt on me, stuff that may wreck everything, and there is no other option than to accept it." Jim stared at her, disbelief written across his face. "Who is threatening you?" Before she could respond to the door, when the door behind them slammed shut and the room became dark, Jim's heart raced. What the heck is going on? A figure emerged from the shadows. It was someone Jim had never expected to see in this place. Someone who had been pulling strings from behind the scenes. But there was the moment Jim understood. The truth was more dangerous than he ever thought. The tension in the room was apparent. Jim's heart raced as he remained still, staring at the man who had just stepped into the shadows. He was trying to understand the situation, but his mind couldn't quite keep up. His fingers tightened automatically, and his stare. "Who the hell are you?" he asked Chrissy, who appeared to be as shocked as he was. Jim demanded his voice harshly. The figure didn't react quickly, coming into the feeble light barely enough for Jim to make out their outline. And then as the figure took another step into view, Jim's blood ran cold. "Camron!" Jim gasped in astonishment. There, standing in front of him, was none other than Camron the same. The man who had been at his side through everything. The man who had stuck by him when no one else would. The man who was meant to be his brother. "Jim, you don't know the complete narrative," Camron replied, his tone grim and almost threatening. "But you will. It's time you discover the truth and stop being oblivious to the greater picture." Jim shook his head, his world spinning. "What the hell are you talking?" Chrissy's eyes flickered between Jim and Camron. "Jim, I didn't want to harm you, but there are things you don't understand." That Camron has been a part of Jim's face, twisted in uncertainty. "No, Chrissy, you've been playing me. From the start, I can't believe you do this. But now, Camron too. What is this? Some kind of setup?" Cameron's gaze softened for a single second, almost as if he felt sorrow Jim. But then it was gone, replaced by the hard expression that had always been there when business was involved. "It's not a setup, Jim. It's the reality. I've been working." Before Jim could react, the sound of a motor engine revving outside attracted his attention. Cameron's face remained blank as he indicated for Jim to follow him. The sudden change in tone, coldness, and detachment scared Jim to his core. What was going on? Why was Camron acting so differently? "Let's go," Camron said, turning his back and walking towards the door. Jim remained there for a while, attempting to digest everything that had just transpired. He couldn't wrap his brain around it, his mind flying from one frightening concept to the next. What was the greater picture? And why had he was so naive? To it, he followed Camron outdoors, unable to shake the impression that he was going right into a trap. The sharp sound of a car door slamming shut rang through the parking lot. There in front of them was a black SUV with tinted windows. Waiting, Jim's heart fell into his stomach. "We're getting out of here," Camron stated, his voice stern. "And you better be ready, Jim. This isn't just about you anymore." It's Jim's gut twisted as he approached the automobile. He didn't sure what to expect or who to trust anymore. But one thing was clear. The game had changed. The stakes were higher than they had ever been. The two men went into the rear of the SUV, the door shutting behind them with a hefty thud. The driver, Jim couldn't see, starting. The car and vehicle began moving in silence. As they drove through the dark streets, the tension in the air was intense. Jim maintained his eyes on Camron, trying to read his face for any clue that this was all some kind of twisted joke. But there was nothing. When the car came to a stop, the driver didn't pull into a typical parking lot. Instead, they arrived at an abandoned structure with its windows boarded up and covered in grime. Jim's nerves were on edge. His senses heightened. What was happening? Where were they taking him? The door opened, and they were escorted out by two men who looked like they were expecting them. Camron led the way, and Jim followed with his head racing. He had no idea where they were. Continuing, but the sense of dread was nearly overwhelming. Inside the building, Jim found himself in a dimly lighted room at the center of a long table, and around it sat a number of beings whose faces were shrouded by shadows. Jim's pulse hammered. What is this? What the hell is going on? One of the figures rose up, and Jim's eyes widened when he recognized who it was. "Surprised to see me, Jim." The man's voice was soft and frightening. "Don't tell me you're engaged in this too," Jim said, scarcely able to believe what he was hearing. "Yeah, I'm more than involved," the man answered with a chilly sneer. "This is only the beginning. Jim, you're going to find out the reason everyone's been playing you." The room fell silent as Jim realized he was far further into something than he had ever anticipated. This wasn't just about Chrissy. This wasn't just about Camron. This was much bigger. And now there's no turning back. So there you have it. The startling truth that no one saw coming. Right, Jim? Jones betrayed by the one person he trusted the most, drawn into a world of deception, corruption, and treachery that goes deeper than we could have ever imagined. But the question remains, who's really behind all this? What's their endgame? And where does this dark journey lead from here? We've just scratched the surface. And trust me, this isn't over. You don't want to miss what's coming next. But hey, you know what they say, justice always catches up, or does it? What do you think Jim Jones is going to be able to fight his way out of this? Or has he already lost the battle? Let me know in comments below. Your ideas could change everything. I want to hear what you think about the truth being exposed like this. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss anything else startling. Revelations. Trust me, do you want to be here for the next explosion? This is merely the tip of the. Keep your eyes peeled and stay tuned for more. Keep in mind that the most stunning, the truth is the most difficult to accept. Capture you in the following one.